Welcome to the Wickedly Smart Women podcast, featuring stellar conversations with emerging and established wickedly smart women. Thanks for joining us today as we celebrate women who are committed, care deeply, and have the courage to take action and create conscious change all around the world. Now here's your wickedly smart host, Anjel B. Hartwell.
Welcome to another episode of the Wickedly Smart Women podcast, where we celebrate wickedly smart women and provide our listeners with a wealth of wisdom, along with immediately actionable steps to be smarter, spunkier, and more successful in their impact and their leadership. This is your host, Anjel B. Hartwell, and today we bring our special guest, Joyce Gerber. Joyce is an attorney, advocate, and writer with exceptional organizational skills, patience, creativity, and compassion, all of which shine through in her work as founder and host of the Canna Mom Show podcast. When she is not advocating for cannabis normalization, Joyce is active with many community and civic organizations in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where she lives with her husband, children, pets, and students from the Berklee School of Music. In her spare time, she has managed a rock band, ran for local political office, and creates one-of-a-kind quilts for friends, family, and the occasional winner of the annual Canna Mom Show Mother's Day quilt giveaway. Joyce has degrees from Northeastern University, Tufts University, and Connecticut College. And when asked to describe his mom, her son Josh said, "She's a force to be reckoned with." So welcome, force to be reckoned with, to Wickedly Smart Women. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. I always forget that he said that. Every once in a while, your kids say something random, and instead of being mad, you're like, "Can I use that? Is that mine?"
Well, Josh must be channeling through what's the truth in the moment. He sees you for who you really are. So you are a force to be reckoned with, Joyce. Let's talk a little bit about, were you somebody who used cannabis in your youth? And is that part of why you have stepped into this role as an advocate? Or is that something that, didn't happen in your youth where you might have been prohibited from it and then something else happened to activate you to become an activist?
So thank you. Thank you for inviting me on to share my story.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I tell my own story, I always say that this is not my natural habitat. I am a 57-year-old woman. I've been married 30 years. I just celebrated my 30th wedding anniversary. Like I said, I'm a mom of two. I play tennis. I wear pearls. And I believed all that stuff. I believed that cannabis was dangerous. That was our era. I did consume it occasionally, but, I thought it was bad for you, really. I had some mom friends. I had some jokes. Like when the kids are little, we had some mom friends. We'd find like a bud. I don't even know where we got it. We'd bring it somewhere and smoke it and then kind of feel weird about it. But it wasn't really part of my life. Mm-hmm. So I say I had a cannabis awakening in 2016. We went out, my husband and I, we live in Massachusetts. We went to Colorado. We did a private tour of the industry. A woman, she has a business called City Sessions. Her name's Goldie. And she picked us up in her car and she gave us like a tour. She gave us an industry tour. So we saw a dispensary, we saw a grow facility. She talked a little bit about the history. I didn't know any of this before. And I call it my cannabis awakening because I realized like literally everything I knew was wrong. So I came back to Massachusetts. Again, it's 2016. My kids are teenagers. So the joke is that I sat them down and said, "Kids, everything I know about cannabis is wrong." And they were like, "Yes." I didn't plan on working on it. It was just like I was having my mind was opening up to this. And then the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the people of the Commonwealth, we voted to approve adult use cannabis in 2016. I'm a mom and I did a lot of things while being a mom, but I did drop out of the world of monetized work. But at the time, in 2016, I was working. And at the end of 2016, a contract position I was working on ended. And then I really just had a hard time getting a job in 2017. That's really kind of the truth of it. I feel like I'm sort of the beginning of a generation, or I'm Gen X. It's like we're invisible. No one even knows we're here, but we are.
Well, let me stop you there because I'm curious about this cannabis awakening. So I really want to dig into that a little bit more. I mean, there must have been something before your trip to Colorado, because why would you make a trip to Colorado to do a tour of the industry? Like, what precipitated that? What inspired that?
Yeah. I mean, it was just there's something interesting. My husband and I always do food tours. That's sort of like when we go to countries, we do food tours, or we actually just came back from a 300-mile bike tour in Greece. Like, I like to do stuff. And cannabis was being sold as tourism, really, in Denver. That's how they do it. So I was looking up things to do, and they have private tours of the industry. And it was just, cannabis was around. I thought it'd be something interesting to do. So we did it.
Fabulous. All right. Well, one of the things I want to talk about now, Joyce, is, the whole navigating the mom thing and the cannabis thing and the law thing, which, I did cannabis when I was a child, in my youth, for sure. One of the things that happened with my own child was I found out that he was using, and I lost it. I completely lost it. But he was coming up in a time where there was so much confusion. It's maybe a little less confusion now, but there's still a lot of confusion. I mean, there are people who are in jail for a pound of pot, right? For long periods of time. And then there are people who are dispensing it, and, there's taxes on, there's it just feels like a fur ball, like a cat fur ball that is very confusing and makes it much more challenging as a parent, I think, to find the way to navigate. So I'd love to have you speak to our listeners about how you found the way in your life to make the communication happen with your children in a way that made sense and where you were all able to be on the same page.
Yeah, so this is a constant conversation we're having. There's a whole network of Canna moms, high society mamas. This is a big thing that people talk about all the time. I will boil it down to transparency. I think that is really where we're starting at and where we're understanding the transition is happening. If you understand the history of cannabis, you know that we live in the 100 years it's been decimated, really, and taken out of our societies. We've had it in the world for 10,000 years. So this plant was taken out of society for a very particular reason, for whatever, and it's coming back now. But this story is very strong. And I talk a lot about stories. We're ruled by stories. Stories are very powerful. These narratives that we hear over and over again are so powerful that they're hard to break out of. And when you believe something, it's hard to not believe it anymore. So where I see it happening, where I see the transition happening, are really in these healing stories. Because whether you're a progressive from Cambridge or you're a conservative from Oklahoma, when you have a relative or a friend or a loved one who finds some sort of healing with this plant, after they've gone through all these other treatments and all these other things, and they come to cannabis as a last resort because they're literally desperate, that opens up people's minds to this, that maybe what they know is wrong. And they can start investigating what cannabis really is, which is plant medicine, which is a medicine that works with our own systems. It's called an endocannabinoid system. We have a system in our body that is receptive to this plant. And one of the issues that people keep talking about, specifically in the hemp industry, which is really going to be bigger and more powerful than just cannabis, is that hemp had always been part of the animal feed. Like, cannabinoids had always been part of our system because it was just there, and it was taken out, which is maybe why it's so powerful as a medicine, because we're entering it back in through smoking and eating it and whatever we're doing with it now. So this is really about health and wellness. That's what I talk about it. So this is a normalization from a bad story. And the stories I'm sharing on the podcast are trying to open up people's minds that maybe what they know is wrong, and that there's another part of this. And that although I talk like cannabis solves every problem, I know it really doesn't. I know that it should be part of the opportunities we're giving to heal ourselves. And it should not be, no longer should it be the thing that people come to out of desperation and as a last resort.
Okay, so I love that perspective. And one of the things that I'm hearing there is that part of your advocacy is about bringing the medicine that this plant is back into society to be applied in ways that allow people to heal, which is a little bit different than let's just go smoke a joint and get high, right? And so do you differentiate within your own work and within your own life between this is plant medicine, we're using it for healing, versus this is, we're just getting high and it's recreational?
I think everyone's using it for healing. I think we have a very mixed up concept of what pharmaceuticals, drugs, alcohol are in this country. Again, this is very cultural.
Mm.
I kind of joke about this. So when my kids were little and I was running out of the office and I was yelling, I'm going to stop at the liquor store before I pick up the kids at daycare, no one would have said a word.
Mm-hmm.
But if I said I'm going to go smoke a joint in the car and then pick up my kids, I would have used it against me in a divorce hearing. So again, these are just like a misunderstanding of why you're using these chemicals to rebalance your world, what is going on with you. And it's just a normalization. I think that's where we're like going towards with this. Like this extremism on either part, what did McCarthy say? Extremism is no vice. It is a vice. It's a thing. It's bad. So cannabis should just be normalized. We're just trying to normalize it. And the fact that it's been demonized for really bad reasons, that has to be exposed and explained why we have to get these people out of jail and why they shouldn't be in there. And the flip side is it can't just be about making money. So I talk to women in the industry. This is my little niche corner. I talk to women and moms and caregivers. I want to elevate their stories because this industry should be ruled by women. This plant is a caregiver. We are the caregivers. This is our industry. It's about trying to do something a little bit different. And so I elevate their stories. And my joke is when I meet, obviously there are tons of men. I'm like, oh my God, there are men in this industry too. But the problem is this is very capital intensive. We can't get banking. It's still federally illegal. There's a lot of other things that are going on and on. But the women I'm talking to are healed. They're evangelized. They're staying in this crazy industry to try to bring it to other people because they want to be the people they needed. And it's a really inspiring. So it's why it's hopeful to be in it. Just, who doesn't want to be around healed people who want to heal other people? That's very hopeful. It's way better than being a divorce attorney.
Although sometimes divorce can be a healing.
It's like a roller coaster, people. You just don't know what's going to happen on the other side.
Exactly. Well, in the last minute or so before we hit the break, one of the pieces I'm also curious about is like, I live in New Hampshire, you live in Massachusetts. Like when they did start to bring in legalized dispensaries and, allowing it for medical use and all of those things, it's like, well, I literally live on the border of Massachusetts. So it's like legal across the border. It's not legal here.
It's ridiculous. Everything in a parking lot, there's a dispensary near the border and they have to exit on the Massachusetts side. It's really extreme. It says plutonium. It's plant medicine. And it's not a belief system. It's a science. This really works. It's like really a thing that works with our bodies.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, we're going to go to the break real quick, but when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about this kind of really fractured system that you and your women that you interview are here to heal the system as much as you are to bring the plant medicine in to normalization again. So right now, though, we're going to take a quick break. Wickedly Smart Women, we need your help. If you're enjoying this show and want us to stay on the air, please consider making a donation at www.wickedlysmartwomen.com. We'd also like to ask you to share with your lovely lady friends who you think might benefit from our content. Help a gal out and let your sisters, mothers, daughters, friends, and colleagues know about the show so we can serve them too. I do want to say a big thank you to all of our listeners who are downloading, rating, and reviewing. We're welcoming thousands and thousands of downloads from all over the world. We're also celebrating that we have just won our 6th and 7th awards. So that's pretty exciting. And we want to shout out this week to our listeners. Let's shout out to our listeners in Massachusetts, as well as our listeners in Mongolia and St. Martin. And we will be right back with Joyce Gerber.
The Wickedly Smart Women podcast is brought to you by the Wealthy Life Mentor. Women, are you on the edge knowing that life is calling you to make a change? Are you ready to be part of the evolution of what it means to be a wickedly smart woman, creating your wealthy life by design? A life that is an extraordinary work of art. Anjel B. Hartwell, the Wealthy Life Mentor, is hired by women in transition. Women just like you who want to break through to their brilliance, become clear on the value of their wisdom, and embody a beauty-filled, balanced life of shameless self-expression. Discover your wealthy life readiness by taking the quiz at quiz.wealthylifementor.com.
And we are back with Joyce Gerber. You can find out more about Joyce and tune into her podcast as well at the Canna Mom Show.com, the CannaMomShow.com. We will have that for you in the show notes. Before we went to the break, we were talking about how this demonization of this plant medicine that Joyce and many of the people that she supports are in the process of attempting to renormalize also has attached to it all kinds of interesting legal ramifications, both federal and state. And like there's all of this fracturing of the way that we can navigate it. So I'd love to have you talk a little bit, Joyce, about your advocacy. Like, in addition to your podcast, are there specific things that you or your guests or your, colleagues in the space are doing to not only normalize the usage, but also to eliminate the confusion?
I will say almost universally, the women I talk to are about education, educating their community, however their community is defined, wherever their community is found. This idea that they are becoming the people they needed is really powerful to me. Like, I can tell a story from a woman. She's up in New York. Her name's Nikki. She had a brain injury. She was basically desperate. She's ready to jump off. She tells me on the podcast, she talks about she wanted to jump off the balcony. Like, she was just done with life. And she saw a cannabis truck or something drive by in Nevada and kind of joked to her husband, something just, offbeat, like, why don't I just get stoned? I have nothing left to lose. And he's like, yeah, let's try it. So they went and she got a joint, whatever it was, she hit it. And she realized that it sort of changed her experience, like her perception. That's a lot of what cannabis does. It kind of calms you down or recenters you, or, it changes your perception. And she was able to kind of deal with some of her pain issues, even when she went back to New York, because she knew this solution existed, and she became a huge advocate. Anyways, it's this idea that people, once they feel it, they know that other people could use their help. And so they come out and they become those people. I think it's really empowering. Again, I think I've said that before.
Yeah, beautiful. So what inspired you to start a podcast, Joyce?
Oh, the perfect trifecta of desperation, isolation, and so much rejection. No, I kind of joke. Like, I got the New York Times paper delivered to my house. I don't really know what a podcast was. I was really learning about cannabis, but when I decided to transition into the world of cannabis, I met someone who wanted to start a media company. He hired me to be his executive producer. So I did that for a year with him on his podcast. And that's really how I learned the industry, how I figured out that cannabis impacted everything from criminal justice to cosmetics. It was sort of like, again, that was very eye-opening to me. And then a year into that job, we started the Canna Mom Show. I was in the studio with a friend. We were just talking about how you talk to the kids in this new era. My friend didn't want to do it because people are still kind of weird about being connected to cannabis. They were talking about calling me the Canna Mom, which, again, I'm not the Canna Mom. The Canna Moms are these women who are really risking a lot to heal themselves, heal their children. And there are organizations of these women across the country who are part of the advocacy of getting this plant medicine back into our systems. So I call it the Canna Mom Show, like the Daily Show, like an interview show. And that's really how it started. I ended up leaving the media company, but I took the podcast with me. And my daughter had just gone to college and my son was away and I didn't have a job. I had a podcast. So I'm like, all right, I'll try to be a podcaster. And here I am 4 years later.
All right. Well, congratulations on that. In fact, you and I met in Clubhouse in Club Pod, I think. So yeah, so that's how we got connected. All right. So how do you talk to your kids in this time, right? Can we talk a little bit about that, since your show does a lot of work in that area as well?
So we talk a lot of moms, kids at different ages with different experiences. I will say kind of universally with the younger children, most of these moms have been cannabis consumers for a very long time. A lot of them were talking about the advocacy even during pregnancy. So their children know that it's just mommy's medicine. And those kids are kind of just growing up like it's just normalized. Like, there's no hiding in the bathroom. There's no spraying yourself with perfume because you smell weird. Like, there's no, again, back to transparency. I think the moms with kids who are teenagers, which is kind of where I was when I started this journey. I mean, I think just admitting that what you don't know, I think that's part of it. because we all kind of come to this with our own baggage and we pass it on to them, admitting what you don't know and explaining to what you do know. Like part of my journey was, who knew we had an endocannabinoid system? Like people still think I'm making that up. The idea that, it was taken out of our system for pretty bad reasons, and it could come back, hemp specifically, it could come back as a paper replacement. It could come back as a building replacement. It can come back for clothing. There's all these things that like hemp could be used for to that's another discussion about what this plant is. And then there are actually lots of books out there. There are women out there writing books to talk about what's growing in grandma's garden. Culturally, how is it used in different cultures, like even Native American culture and African American cultures. And, just this idea that's always been plant medicine. It's always been here, but we've just sort of hidden it for the past 100 years, and it's coming back. And then like with older kids, I kind of joke about the pandemic, so when my kids were in college, they were sent home like refugees, and I did not know cannabis would be essential. And I was running around buying like salves and tinctures and flour, and we had no toilet paper. But when they came home, like, we were in the house together, we were in lockdown together. We consumed together and we talked to each other, and it was very relaxing, and we weren't drinking. And I say this, I would rather be in lockdown with a stoner than a drinker. And now it's just very open in my house. We literally have a Canna bar, like my back porch. I have bongs and trays. And if you come to my house and you want to consume, you go to my back porch, and it's fine.
Beautiful.
We've normalized it. So it's been a transition though. It's an interesting, and it is different ages, and it's different ways that you come into this industry or come into this plant medicine, like anything. But I think sometimes just admitting you don't know stuff and being transparent are two like easy ways to start.
I love that. Admitting you don't know stuff, that's actually a paradigm shift for parenting too, right? Because I mean, like that alone is a parenting paradigm shift. Like, I don't know shit about what's going on here. I'm just,
you're lucky that you're alive, kids. Like, I kept you alive. You have no idea.
Yeah, we don't want to parent like our parents did, but we don't really know what the hell we're doing. And you didn't come with an instruction manual.
Instruction manual. They take a lot of time. Those children, they take a lot of time.
Yeah, they do. Well, I have a question for you, Joyce. It's maybe, I don't know whether it's off topic or not, but one of the things for me that I became clear about when the whole marijuana was coming into my house and the timing of that and the outcome after that, was a little bit dark. So I'm just going to say that. Yeah. There is this kind of cultural storyline that it's a gateway drug. And from my knowing, and please educate me, this is not the marijuana that's out there today is not your mama's marijuana. I mean, when I was doing marijuana, we were like separating the seeds from the sticks. And it wasn't like crystallized purple glowing in the dark shit. So can we talk about both the idea of like the more potency, right, and the hybridization of this plant medicine, as well as the idea of the gateway kind of situation?
So I just sort of refute the gateway. I mean, we have so many gateways. We have sugar and alcohol, and give our kids, my kid is 21 and 24. Every kid was medicated. I don't know. We have a lot of gateways. So I just don't blame the pot. Don't blame the pot. I think the idea that we're treating this plant like a real plant now, and it's not coming in a baggie with seeds and things, and we can see that it's got terpenes, and which is so important. Like that's a whole nother level of this medicine. It's kind of like full-bodied, lots of like different things connect with your own body, kind of. And just so you know, I'm like not an earthy, crunchy girl. I play tennis. I wear pearls. Like I never manifested anything. But I understand.
You manifested a podcast, girl. What are you talking about?
But this idea that it's like, and I don't, I try to get more to nature. I actually grew my own this year just to be kind of connected to it. Like this is a plant that's got, you feel connected to it, and that it's beautiful and pretty and it smells good. Like that is part of the like understanding that this is plant medicine that can and heal you. It's not just like it's stuff on a baggie. So that's that. But there's also so many products now. I was talking to a friend this morning about how I give out CBD, like samples of CBD bombs that I know are good, to my mom's friends when she was in the nursing home, because it eased up their arthritis or it made their hands feel better. So, accessing it in different ways. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of this. And the other thing about it being, it is more potent, and I'm not going to disregard that. And I don't think it's a good idea. And I don't like the high potency. I think it's ridiculous, but that's another discussion. There's a lot of choices now. And if you want to do something at 1-to-1 CBD, if you want to smoke hemp flower, if you want to, eat cookies, or, there's other ways that you want to get cannabinoids into your system. You have a lot of choices now, and they're tested. It's over tested probably, but they're tested. So you know what's in there, as opposed to what you're getting from like in a baggie that someone hands you off. So there are trade-offs for this in a lot of ways of like, just normalizing it. And then hopefully what you're getting, because you're putting it in your body. Like you're ingesting, you're ingesting this and you're putting it on your skin. So, it's CBD products are kind of particularly tricky. There are some amazing ones out there, but there are some ones that really aren't what they say. This is, if you want to talk about, the weirdness of its like locality, like this is federally illegal. And you're not just dealing with like state issues, you're dealing with like municipality issues down to like very specific. Each municipality has a different decision, how hemp can be transported, where you're getting the CBD from, is it in your state, out of your state? There's all these other like weird things that it's going to be interesting to see what happens when it goes federally, because a lot of these things that we have now are going to change radically. But, if you want to do something that's local, like, a Massachusetts brand that's using Massachusetts hemp, that's getting it in a really organic way or good way. You can see that now, because you could have that kind of access to a lot of these products. And like some of the things I recommended, these products, not the ones that maybe are more mass marketed, because I don't think they're really doing what they say they're going to do. And then you think CBD doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, so then what I'm hearing there is the old maxim, buyer beware, right? So, and what I'm also hearing there, Joyce, is number one, it's about renormalizing or, de-demonizing, renormalizing, and then at some level sort of standardizing so that consumers can be educated both about the benefits as well as about, what they're purchasing. And so, it's interesting. And I'm so glad that you were able to come on the show and share your wisdom with us, and that you have created this podcast to help others and to illuminate those stories, which, it's all about the stories. When somebody tells you that they've been healed of something as a result of using something, it can sound fantastical. In my case, it was, I had a massive healing from being on a sound healing table, right? It sounds fantastical, but once you've had the experience, you can't deny your own experience. So I think at the end of the day, what I want my listeners to know is, be educating yourself, be open, be willing to look at whatever's been demonized to see whether there's some things that you don't know that you don't know. Be transparent and tune into Joyce and listen to the Canna Mom Show and hear the stories of the people whose lives have been impacted by this. Listeners, we do love feedback. Please let us know what you thought of today's show by calling into our listener line. We'll have that for you in the show notes, or you can send in questions or guest suggestions to listeners@wickedlysmartwomen.com. We might even give you a shout out on the show. Thank you for tuning in. Keep your ears open, and remember, you are a wonderful woman.
Thanks for tuning in, downloading, and listening. Be sure to rate and review Wickedly Smart Women on Apple Podcasts and share with other women who can benefit from today's episode. Wickedly Smart Women is the premier podcast series for informing, activating, and inspiring the leader who carries profound wisdom and knows that now is the time to welcome wealth. We welcome your feedback and guest suggestions and invite you to subscribe to our mailing list to be notified of each new episode at wickedlysmartwomen.com.